The NFL Combine is underway in Indianapolis, and it's the next step for the Minnesota Vikings in their new era. And thank you for joining us for our NFL Combine special. I'm Hobie Artigue.
Yeah, Vikings, a new era. I'm Tatum Everett, and the new management of the Minnesota Vikings, GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and new head coach Kevin O'Connell have been in Indy all week. Really the official kickstart to the offseason.
Yes, it is. The NFL official season gets underway with free agency in a couple of weeks and then the NFL draft at the end of April. But we're here to break down some of the guys and the players that are standing out to the purple and where this team can go in the offseason. We have a full special coming your way. Pete Bursich joins us to break down some of his top prospects that could be a perfect fit for the purple, especially on defense.
And we'll hear from the NFL draft experts on who they think the Vikings should pick at number 12 in this year's NFL draft.
Plenty of options there and plenty of questions that we will take from you, the fans, about the Vikings in the Combine, the NFL draft, and just where they could go in the offseason with some potential moves to make.
But before the Combine got going, Vikings' new head coach and GM made their national media rounds. Let's hear from our boots on the ground from Vikings Entertainment Network's Gabe Henderson and Ben Lieber as they weigh in on their impressions of this new Vikings era.
All right, Gabe Henderson here alongside Ben Lieber. Ben, we are both in Indy. We've been here all week, and the vibe has been the most talked about thing here. For you, what has been your perspective of everything that has transpired here in Indy?
The vibe has been great. I mean, ever since we checked into the hotel, there's just a buzz in the hotel lobby. It's amazing how we just celebrate a Rams Super Bowl win. You get the parade. There's a small break, and all of a sudden now we're here at the Combine in Indianapolis, and everybody's already focused on 2022. You know, 2021's already over. A lot of excitement, a lot of buzz. Obviously for us and Vikings country and Vikings world, a lot of new changes, and yeah, just excitement all around.
Excitement all around, especially with this new regime here now. You got Kevin O'Connell, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. We saw them talk earlier. We'll talk about that later in this segment. But first and foremost, everybody is talking about this 12th overall pick. What are the Vikings going to do? There's a lot of things, a lot of holes on the defensive side of the ball that we can replace. There's a few holes on the offensive side of the ball. But in your opinion, what do we do with that 12th overall pick?
It's been the biggest debate that I think you and I have talked about, not only together privately, but as we talk to other people, other draft experts. You know, just the thought of what is more important. Obviously, there is a need for both spots, and we've got a lot of different opinions. But it seems like, and I will agree, that solidifying a pass rush only helps out the defense in totality. You know, it helps out your cornerbacks, whether they're high enders or average players. It helps out the linebackers in coverage as well. Clearly, if you look at the last two Super Bowls, Tampa Bay. As much as Tom Brady gets a lot of credit, right? And the offense gets a lot of credit. That defensive front is what won that Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to this last Super Bowl with the Rams. Everybody wants to talk about McVay, creativity, all this other stuff, and they leveraged their future to get their quarterback of the future to bring it. But really what ended up winning the game was their pass rush.
Right.
So I just think that if we're sitting at 12, and I know free agency still has to happen, you don't know what our contract situation is going to look like. I just think that we need to solidify the pass rusher opposite Danielle Hunter, especially in a new 3-4 scheme. What are your thoughts?
I'm right there with you. I think a cornerback has to be thought about, but if there's a defensive pass rusher at that 12 spot, why not take him? But you got to balance out with best player available, and I'm sure Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell both had that in mind, and they spoke about that at their press conference. So what were your thoughts on what they had to say this week?
You know, I thought they performed great. You know, everything that we've seen from both of them with every introductory press conference, anything that they do, they just seem like they belong and they already get it. You know, the moments never seem too big for them. The questions never seem too big for them. Obviously, they're prepared for things, but I thought Kevin and Kwesi, they performed great.
They've been the most quietest guys. Most quietest is not a word that you should put together, but they've been the most quiet guys here at the Combine. But it's going to be interesting once they start making some changes and implementing their vision for the future going forward. And Vikings fans, make sure you stay tuned because the future is now, and I'm looking forward to it right here with my guy Ben Lieber.
Well, as Gabe and Ben alluded to, the future is now and still very new. Kevin O'Connell just over 2 weeks on the job before addressing the media at the Combine.
Yeah, he and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah continue to build that partnership, that relationship, if you will. And earlier this week, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah referred to Kevin O'Connell as a systems thinker whenever it comes to applying both on and off of the football field. And here's what KOC believes that means.
It's a process thinker, and you put value in that process, the consistency in that process to treat each and every week as its own entity when you're playing games and opponents. How you evaluate in the draft. You can't, you might have your core principles and characteristics and factors you look for a position, but you cannot, just put everybody into a box and say this is what we're looking for, because you're going to miss on. You're going to miss on some players that ultimately maybe don't fit a core characteristic, but you can find a way to use that player in a way that their potential is maximized and it fits in with the other 10 guys.
As you can tell, Kevin O'Connell excited to get to work with the Vikings at the NFL Combine. But Tatum, whenever you look at the Combine and in the offseason as a whole, there is plenty of work for the Vikings front office to get to as we move into these next few weeks.
That's right. First-year general manager Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah has his hands full with the Vikings salary cap. It raised several questions from the national media when he made his rounds at the Combine. And here's his answer to figuring out that puzzle.
I have an economics background. And I know I say the word economics and everybody probably cringes because nobody liked economics and when they learned it. But, you talk about economics, it's optimizing utility, right? It's a very simple equation and there's constraints that you have and you solve for those constraints. The NFL puzzle is different because you don't know what that equation looks like. You don't know exactly what those constraints look like. So there's a little bit of art, there's a little bit of science, and that's what makes the puzzle fun. Honestly, that's what drew me to the sport, and it's why I think all of us love competing at the highest level.
And there are several big free agent names that Kwesi's going to have to keep in mind, like Anthony Barr, Patrick Peterson. It is going to be truly a puzzle to figure out. However, Hobie, that wasn't the hottest topic of the Combine so far.
That's the biggest piece of the puzzle, not just from the Combine, but the entire offseason up to this point. And that's what the Vikings will do with Kirk Cousins. Kevin O'Connell was asked about it in his introductory press conference. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah was asked about it in his introductory press conference, as well as at the NFL Combine. But he had some great things to say about the Vikings quarterback, who still is under contract, and called him an incredible player. Take a listen.
And I think what you know about Kirk is when the odds are shifted in his favor, he gets the most out of it, right? And I think people don't appreciate that skill enough. But he's incredibly consistent, incredibly accurate thrower, tough. He's durable. He plays every game. He stands in there and takes those hits when those throws are a little bit harder to come by. He's an incredible player, really cerebral. He's one of the first phone calls I made. And one of the funny things I love about being in this job is you come in with a preconceived notion about NFL players. And then you get here and they're just so different than you. I mean, they're all just so talented. I text all my Wall Street buddies all the time, like they would all take our jobs, just so we're clear. And so Kirk is no different.
We have to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have one of Pete Bursich's legendary film studies. And Hobie, he's high on this 2022 stacked edge rusher class. That's after the break.
Welcome back to Vikings, a new era, NFL Combine Special.
Welcome back to a new era, an NFL Combine Special, as the Minnesota Vikings look for their newest player in Indianapolis. Now, in the NFL Draft, there are multiple ways the purple could go, but Pete Bursich says that one position group right now has an edge. Here's more.
The draft is always an exciting time for Viking fans, and what's exciting for me is seeing our defense get after the quarterback. Let's take a look at some of the top edge rushers in the 2022 NFL Draft and see which one of them we might just see in purple. Now, the first edge rusher we're going to discuss is Kayvon Thibodeau out of the University of Oregon. This 6'5", 258-pound junior has everything that you could possibly want out of an edge rusher: the size, the length, the speed, the quickness. Let's take a look at the film. On this first play, you're going to see him lined up to the right of your screen. In this case, he's going against a tight end, right? One-on-one. You'll see when he takes that first step and gets up the field, he gets that foot planted in the ground, gets that long arm in there, and once he gets that burst, that pop, that separation, he's able to rip, get underneath, and get to the quarterback and then make a huge play. When you get blocked by a tight end, you should win. He wins this one. All right, another example of him really coming underneath. This time he's working with the linebacker on a stunt. And because of his speed, the offensive tackle has to get up the field. And he baits him up the field. He wants to get him up the field and creates that separation between the tackle and the guard. You'll see the hands come up, slap, rip, get underneath, and he has a free rein all the way to the quarterback, but he has that strength to not get washed down, but to keep that shoulder in and then make a huge play. The next guy on our list of edge rushers is Aiden Hutchinson from the University of Michigan. Now this guy's 6'6", 265 pounds, has all the size, 14 sacks last year for the Michigan Wolverines. So this guy's been playing against some good talent and he can get the job done. On this first play, what you're gonna see is just really the athleticism and his ability to keep the hands of the tackles off of his body. The right tackle, he sets short sets, meaning he doesn't step back, he kind of steps up. Hutchinson reads this and sees this, and as the tackle shoots his hands, you're gonna see the head is down on this offensive tackle. But he gets those hands away, rips and clubs underneath, hit the quarterback and get that football on the ground, a huge play. Now, this play I think outlines his intelligence and then his open field athletic ability. As you're gonna see, there's a wide receiver from the outside of your screen that's gonna come in and try to block him. But as soon as this receiver comes down and really isn't trying to get his head across and he sees the back come his way, no handoff, he immediately gets to the outside of the receiver. He knows that he has to keep contained. Quarterback can't set up, and then it's that ability to drop that shoulder, turn those hips, get around the corner, and make the sack. Our next edge rusher from Purdue, the 6'4", 275-pound George Karlaftis. Now this kid grew up in Greece, came to America as a teenager, and now he's one unbelievable pass rusher. Now this guy's all about power and he's about smarts. And you're gonna see on play number 1, he's on the right side of your screen. As he gets up the field, he feels and sees that that running back is there to chip him. Because of that, he's not gonna take the outside edge on that tackle. He's gonna take him more right down the middle. He takes this offensive tackle, buckles him, almost knocks him on the ground, gets out, slaps a football away, causes a fumble, but just a very, very powerful, great pad level type pass rusher. Oh, power rush you like? Well, how about another one? Here's a great example against Notre Dame. You'll see Karlaftis on the left side of your screen, gets himself upfield, wants to get that big tackle moving, and then plants that left foot into the ground, and watch this. He gets both hands inside and just keeps pressing this tackle, and he folds him like a pup tent. I mean, this is a thing of beauty. To take a 300 and some pound offensive tackle and just dump him on the pile, that's an amazing play. And finally, we get to David Ojabu, the other defensive end from the University of Michigan. Now this guy is 6'5", about 250, may need to get a little time in the weight room, but this guy is all about speed. He is by far the speediest pass rusher of this group. On this first play, he's at the right defensive end position. We've got a blitz. This is just get up the field and make something happen. He has the speed to get up, and when the offensive tackle puts his hands on him, he's already almost past him. You'll see those shoulders turn and his ability to turn that corner. Gets in there, gets the ball away, causes the fumble. This guy's all about speed, man, speed on the edge. And we're gonna end this with another great example of the speed that he has. You'll see the tackle gets that left hand in there. The tackle has longer arms like most of these guys in the NFL, but he's able to get that shoulder underneath, and that is really an amazing transition, and then has the speed to chase down a fast quarterback. So to sum up this group, they got a lot of good pass rushers. Some guys use speed, some guys use power, a couple of them use both. But a very, very smart group, and any one of these edge rushers would be a huge add to this Minnesota Vikings defense.
We still have a month and a half before the Vikings are on the clock with pick number 12 in the 2022 draft. After the break, we hear from some of the best draft analysts around and who they think the Vikings will select in the first round.
You're watching Vikings, a new era, NFL Combine Special.
Welcome back into Vikings, a new era, the NFL Combine Special. It's the first step towards the 2022 NFL Draft, which, Hobie, is really a month and a half away. The Vikings with their first top 15 pick since 2015.
Picking at number 12, and right now mock drafts are just all over the place. And let's start with some of those expert picks. Here's Andrew Siciliano and Jordan Reed on who they think the Vikings will take with their first pick.
Okay, knowing we're 2 weeks before free agency and don't know what they're going to do in free agency, I would say if David Ojabo from Michigan, the guy on the other side of Aiden Hutchinson, was sitting there, that'd be a pretty good pick.
I would take David Ojabo, edge rusher from Michigan, and I just think he's a player that fits a lot of the qualifications that Kwesi is going to be looking for from an age standpoint. He's only 22 years old right now, only started playing football in 2017, and the Vikings have a huge need at edge rusher. They haven't selected a defensive end in the first 2 rounds of the draft since 2005 with Erasmus James, so there's a huge need with addressing the defensive end spot, so I would take David Ojabo, defensive end from Michigan.
And David Ojabo would be a great pick for them because whenever you watch his tape, as we saw with Pete earlier, the way he played at Michigan, especially last season, was fantastic. He had 5 forced fumbles last year. That was tied for 3rd in the NCAA. On the surface right now, with where things stand, the Vikings could be getting a very versatile player to plug in on that new defense if they go with David Ojabo.
You mentioned that new 3-4 defense, and that has to be in the back of everyone's mind as we continue to go through these picks. Cornerback is a definite need for this team, and as we see from Daniel Jeremiah and Chris Sims, that's where they think the Vikings will go at 12.
If I'm sitting there at 12 overall, and I've got so many different names running through my head, I'm going to cheat and say that somehow, some way, Sauce Gardner falls to number 12, and you just turn in the card, and everybody has a Merry Christmas.
With the 12th overall pick, the Minnesota Vikings should take the best available pass rusher or corner that's on the board. And I'm going to say it's going to be a corner at that spot. So I'll say Sauce Gardner, Cincinnati, corner. You need him? Okay, cool. That works. Good.
Pardon the pun, you can put this sauce on pretty much anything and everything all over the football field. In his career at Cincinnati, he did not give up a single receiving touchdown. He's long, he's physical, he's 6'3", and last year, whenever people wanted to see him play against top-tier talent against Alabama in the college football playoff, he held their top receiver, Jamison Williams, to -2 receiving yards. If Sauce Gardner is there, the Vikings might have to go.
There are going to be plenty of options there for the Vikings to pick a defensive guy at 12. And there are obviously, as you said earlier, several different opinions. We go back to the edge with this one from Bucky Brooks at the NFL Network.
If I'm the Minnesota Vikings, I am taking Purdue pass rusher George Karlaftis with the 12th overall pick. The reason why I want to take Karlaftis is because I want another energetic pass rusher in the rotation. In this league, it's about building a team that can win the division because that guarantees you a ticket to the postseason. The best way to do that is to have multiple guys on that defensive line that can get after Aaron Rodgers, and so Karlaftis is the pick for me.
Karlaftis is a guy who could be there, and he's a defensive end who has a lot of power whenever you watch his game. Could be that defensive end type the Vikings want to fit into a 3-4 defense. But again, that's just one area that the Vikings could focus on as they head into the draft.
And Charles Davis with CBS Sports spoke about several of those areas of concern. He couldn't just pick one guy.
The linebackers have been taken care of so ably by Eric Kendricks and Anthony Barr for so long. Do you start to supplement there? There's a Nakobe Dean out of Georgia. There's a Devin Lloyd out of Utah who I really, really like. And while I'm not sure anyone's Micah Parsons, Lloyd has a little bit of that towards him with the speed. He can run, he can blitz. So I kind of look at him a little bit. If you want to go edge, okay, I think that Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeau are both gone by 12. Is George Karlaftis out of Purdue, of interest? How high do you go for Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State?
And he's an Eden Prairie, Minnesota guy.
Eden Prairie, Minnesota guy.
There you
what
go.
about a Trayvon Walker out of Georgia? How high do you go with something like that? But those are some names that are kind of kicking around my old cabeza for right now.
Thanks to all our experts for their analysis on pick number 12. Coming up after the break, we will finally get to your fan questions. From Kirk to Daniil, Hobie's got your answers after this.
This is Vikings, a new era. NFL Combine Special.
We've been teasing this segment for the entire special, but it's something that I'm really looking forward to. It's your fan questions. We asked you if you had any combine, NFL offseasons, Vikings-related questions for Hobie, and now he's on the hot seat.
Oh, my goodness.
There were some good ones, Hobie.
There were.
Let's kick it off with this first one from Tay. She says, do you think the Vikings go cornerback or offensive guard first in the draft?
Oh, that is a good question. And we looked at some of those corners earlier whenever you're talking Sauce Gardner and Derek Stingley Jr. If one of those two are there, you just have to go for him, because who else do the Vikings have at cornerback right now to really make an impact on the roster? Sauce is a guy who you put him in right away and he can make an impact. Derek Stingley Jr., I guess time will tell, since he has missed time in the last 2 seasons at LSU. But whenever you look at the offensive line right now, the only guy I see that really jumps out to validate maybe the number 12 overall pick is Tyler Linderbaum out of Iowa. He is a center. He really can hold his anchor, and he can get downfield whenever it comes to the run game too. But that also brings up another question. What would the Vikings do with Garrett Bradbury? Would he move to guard and Linderbaum could take over at center? But that is a great question as to what the Vikings could do. Those are 2 options.
And we know just how valuable an offensive line is when you've got a guy like Kirk Cousins in the backfield. And that is where our next fan question comes from. Tim Segla says Cousins is the most talked about Vikings right now. He asks, what is the most realistic outcome, trade, extension, or playing out the last year of his contract?
Trade, I would take that off of the table right now, because I'll ask another question. If not Kirk Cousins, who? Because this offense was very successful last year. Maybe not on third down. That will be an area that they will need to focus on. As for extension, get to that a little bit down the road, because right now with a new head coach and a new GM, you need a good quarterback, because this is a franchise that said all offseason long they expect to be competitive. In today's NFL, what do you need? Good quarterback play. And don't you think that maybe you want to pair Kirk Cousins with a guy he has previous experience with, and a guy who has an offensive mind who says they would like to build things for their quarterback? I would say worry about right now in 2022 with Kirk Cousins being the quarterback of the Purple, because he does give this team the best chance to win in 2022.
Now, another name that has been coming up as someone that's a bit of a hot topic is Danielle Hunter. And our friend Janet submitted a question. What do you do with Hunter? Last 2 years of major injuries. Do you save money on the cap and trade him for a draft pick?
Have you seen the defense without Danielle Hunter the last 2 seasons?
Yes, I have.
2020 was a mess, especially whenever it came to getting after the quarterback. Last year, Danielle Hunter played 7 games. He had 6 sacks. That was the leader up until the very end of the season whenever DJ Wanham took that spot over with his 8 sacks. Look, Danielle Hunter, he's already a talked about piece, and he is a very talented player. Ed Donatel also said, the Vikings' new defensive coordinator, he would like to see him at kind of that rush edge type position whenever it comes to getting after the quarterback, because Hunter not only helps the defensive line, he helps the linebackers, and he also helps out the secondary, which clearly they could have used in the last 2 seasons. The big question, can he stay healthy?
Well, if we didn't get to your fan question, be sure to tune in to the Vikings Entertainment Network as we release a new Pick 6 mailbag on Tuesday. You can submit your questions on Twitter at me, Tatum Everett.
Well, a new era continues for the Minnesota Vikings, and that'll do it for our NFL Combine special. Along with Tatum Everett, I'm Hobie Artigue. We'll see you later as NFL free agency gets set to kick off in a few weeks before the NFL draft at the end of April.